have diabetes and do your best to help yourself.
To learn even more about diabetes, go to the American Diabetes Association's website at www.diabetes.org.
We just leave it as a nature preserve.
It's serene, you're not around a lot of people. There's only so many natural spaces.
Good evening.
What we're going to do is I'm going to have grace and prayer, all right? I'm going to invite everybody here who wants to get something to eat to go ahead and get something to eat, all right? And you can sit and eat, including our public. You're welcome to do the same, all right? And then after then, we will start off our presentation. We'll turn it over to staff to give us the presentation, all right? So bow with me if you will. God, our rock in a weary land, our shelter in the time of storm, we thank you for this day, a day that we have never seen before, but a day that you have given us health and strength. And now that we come, O God, to this point of the day, we ask thy blessing upon the food which has been prepared for the nourishment of our bodies. We thank you for the health and strength those who prepare. And as we fellowship and as we discuss, oh, Father God, give us that oneness of mind that everything we do will be decent and in order according to your will and according to your way. Bless us now as only you can. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Let me invite everybody to eat. All right? You go ahead and eat, and because I know it's been a long day. All who want to Manager, turn it over in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Turn it on.
Mic's on, so that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We got two topics we want to talk about this afternoon. One being the indoor sports complex, which I guess a lot of staff call our mega gym, and the other is proposed changes to the special service district. And just to tee it up for the first topic, the issue we want to address today and what we'll be focusing in on is siting the facility. I think we have to determine and come up with where we're going to site the facility so we can move forward with it. So we've got our consultants. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Holly, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. She's going to introduce our consultants. And they're going to go back through some of the information we've already shared with you initially when we did the first presentation. What we're going to focus in on today is the site analysis so we can better hopefully come out of this session with some idea as to where we want to site the facility. So and they're here to answer any questions you may have and to provide additional input. So Holly?
Can you hear me now?
That's it now. You know how to turn it on.
Thanks for having us here this evening. We have brought two folks with us today. Patrick Graham from CHA, which you guys are likely very familiar with. He's worked on quite a few projects with us, Memorial Stadium and Ambuck and the improvements we have coming at Stowe Park. And then all the way from Minneapolis, we've got Joel Feldman from CSL. He's here to present to y'all honed in on those different site options for this gym. So I'll turn it over to y'all.
Thank you, Holly. Commissioners, appreciate the audience this evening. We've just got a handful of slides to go through, as Mr. Kegler pointed out, the site analysis. We originally did a site analysis with the preliminary study, the feasibility study that we presented to you here a couple months back. We were looking at originally 7 different locations throughout the county. We did a very detailed scoring matrix to try and hone in on trying to target a couple of different sites. Ultimately, as part of that process, what we were looking to try and identify were locations that would be viable options for developing this 12-court indoor amateur sports complex. Something that would both provide a service to the local community and provide an opportunity to generate and retain as much economic impact from bringing in people from outside of the area into Chatham County and retain the dollars that would be spent at local hotels, restaurants, and experiencing the destination as possible. From that original analysis of 7 sites, we honed in on 3 sites that kind of rose to the top in terms of potential opportunities. The South Chase site, the Tom Triplett Park site, and a site at Port Wentworth. All 3 had higher scores than the other 4 for a variety of different reasons, but we were asked to provide some additional analysis on those 3 sites to try and narrow it down even further to help make a decision on the best process, the best location to start looking at moving forward. So we've got a brief map here just to show generally where they're located within the county, and then I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to walk through some of the siting and facility layout preliminary views.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, so I'll walk you through the 3 different sites. So just high-level overview, the first is the South Chase site. That is right next to the Lowe's and Home Depot there on Abercorn Street, undeveloped property that the county currently owns. And so if you'll go to the next slide, Joel. Oh, that one doesn't.
Oh, shoot, this is the old one. Do we get?
Yep. Okay, so we'll work on that. We did have, we had a couple extra slides that we added in that showed a layout. So just as an overview, what we have done with each of the 3 sites is tried to take a look at some of the existing data that is available on those sites. So there's a lot of data that is available through SAGIS system to look at, of course, floodplain issues, look at potential for wetland areas, look at basic topography from the county's LIDAR data, things like that. So we looked at that for each of the sites and looked at potential access points for those. So with the South Chase site, we've got, there is a floodplain that comes across sort of the middle of the site. And so, but we do have room there that we can site the gym, which is the orange block that you see there. That's just kind of a massing diagram to show you the rough size of the 12-court gym. And then we would have an access point to the access road that runs over to the commercial development there with the Lowe's. So we can fit the gym on the site, and we can fit it outside of the 100-year floodplain. So, and then I think we'll just wait for this to pop right back up, and then we'll talk a little bit about how the parking layout would work in that site.
I like this one already. I echo that.
Purchased for the extension of the parkway? So we know now we're never building the parkway across there?
Well, at that time when the Truman was going, there was about 5 competing intersections and how those would wrap in with Phase 5 in Abercorn. And nobody could tell us how much land we needed. So we drew a line and we didn't know how much to take. We figured we'd be better off taking it all than coming up short halfway through.
So the intent was never to continue the road?
So I don't see it continuing there. No.
And we were going to do a flyover. One of the iterations had a flyover going over Abercorn, coming down, and I think that was never, we didn't see a need for that.
You don't anticipate ever needing it with the doubling in the amount of persons that we're supposed to have within the next 3 years?
We don't anticipate, not unless engineering, we don't anticipate that.
It's a great location. Very expensive piece of land, and we're going to need that in the future. We might need.
So we did look at that a few years back, and what we found was making some operational improvements along that corridor, that Abercorn 204, would provide similar benefits. So it wasn't cost effective to go ahead and do any flyover.
Yeah, and I understand. And it wasn't cost effective to do a flyover on Jimmy DeLoach in 80 when we originally charted it, but then we wound up seeing the need and we did it. And it's going to keep traffic flowing there much better. And if we're truly, like the chairman's been famous for saying lately, with the governor's told him that we're going to double our population in 3 years, we may need a flyover right there because we got to live somewhere. And that's a main artery, so.
All that is up for consideration, and that's why we're bringing this up.
That's why I'm pointing it out. I mean, I'd hate to see y'all spend millions later to tear it down.
So what is on the screen now, and thank you very much, is a test layout showing the gym on the property as well as a parking lot layout. We're showing 650 spaces, which is, that's enough to meet code requirements in terms of parking for a gym of that size. But we stay out of the floodplain, and it works well. One of the other benefits of this site in particular is the stormwater pond that is there behind the Lowe's building is actually a regional stormwater pond, which would take the stormwater from this site. So that's another benefit to the South Chase site. So, next one. The next site is Tom Triplett, so out on Highway 80, and One thing in particular to point out about this particular site is the property we're showing the gym on is actually Georgia Ports Authority property. So they own that property. I got a whole story from Pat Monahan about how he actually sold that property, helped sell that property to GPA. And I think that was all in relation to the mega site when that was being developed initially. There is a rail spur that comes across that property and then feeds in just behind Mitsubishi Power Systems Group there at the mega site. But what we're showing is there is some high upland that is right there in the corner. Obviously, the site is currently unused by GPA, and at least in Pat Monahan's thoughts, you know, it may be that we can negotiate to get that property. But that's the county does not currently own this property next. So this is what it would look like if we do the gym on the adjacent property. It fits in well in terms of the other amenities you've got there at Tom Triplett Park. And then we're proposing an access route that would then go over and tie into Pine Barren Road, just to give you an additional point of egress or ingress to serve the gym. That would require crossing of that rail spur. So again, this would be an important point of consideration in any negotiations with GPA to make sure that that's part of the negotiations to say, hey, can we get your help to negotiate this rail crossing? Okay. And then the last is Port Wentworth. So this is a proposed a complex that Port Wentworth is developing. They have developed a master plan, which is what you see on the screen. And they have indicated that they are they would support siting of the county's gym on that property. So we looked at how that would impact their current master plan. So you see the massing of the gym in that orange box, and then Joel, if you go to the next. So this is again a test layout showing where the gym would fit on within their master plan. And what we have done is we would have to work with them on the design because we're showing some modifications to their loop road within the complex and also some modifications to their parking lots. But it all seems like it can work within their overall design and not impact any of the wetlands that they have delineated out on that property. So those are the three properties, and I will turn it back over to Joel to talk a little bit more about the analysis. Yes.
So as Patrick was looking at the physical layout of the properties and ensuring that we are able to test fit this and place it on these locations, CSL went back and did some additional analysis on the economics around the areas to understand the opportunity to provide access both to local community members and residents to these sites, as well as from a sports tourism standpoint, the access to various amenities, hotels, restaurants, other economic drivers within the community that could benefit from the presence of a sports complex like this. Now, typically, in conversations that we've had over the past 20 years with various sports tournament and tourism organizers and the people that are attending these events, they like to have amenities within maybe a 10 or 15-minute drive of the actual site. It's a little different than a convention center. It's a different model in terms of the people that we're attracting in. They tend to be driving a little bit more. They tend to be, from a hotel's standpoint, they're looking for rooms at a slightly different price point. With a lot of doubles or two twin beds in the room because it's mom and dad and little Johnny and little Susie that are staying in the room. They have more people in the rooms. It's on their dime rather than the business dime. And therefore they are also looking at something that they're willing to drive a little bit for to get to these amenities. But at the same time, as you're going to these basketball or volleyball or martial arts or cheerleading or gymnastics or other sports and activities, tournaments and meets and competitions, as you're competing and you have breaks in between games or performance times, you're looking for assets like restaurants and amenities in the area that you can get to relatively quickly to and from in order to be able to feed your kids, feed your family, and experience the destination. So the first thing that we looked at here was the amenities within 1 mile of each of the 3 sites, plotting out each of the different restaurant locations, attractions based off of analysis from TripAdvisor, and the hotel properties that are within a driving distance of each of these locations. As you see with this slide here, the South Chase site has the most restaurants within 1 mile of the site, just because of the economic proximity to all of the other infrastructure in that area. There's a lot more going on around the South Chase site than we see within 1 mile of either Tom Triplett or the Port Wentworth site. But still no hotel rooms within that 1 mile, which is not really a deal breaker for typical sports tourism attendees. As we look at about a 3 mile radius, now we start to see even more restaurants and hotels now starting to pop up within the surrounding areas on both South Chase and Tom Triplett Park. The Port Wentworth site is still a little sparse in terms of the access to amenities, particularly the restaurants and just having the one hotel that is within 3 miles. And as we look at within 5 miles, and this is about that 10 to 15 minute drive time that we would typically anticipate for getting access to the amenities. So all 3 of these are viable options to consider in terms of access from a sports tourism attendee's standpoint to being able to get to the restaurants and the hotels that they would be looking at. We did a quick analysis on the hotel properties around each of these sites, and they tend to fall in that mid-scale range in terms of the price point and having the number of double rooms that would suit well for having and hosting sports tourism assets, activities at the sports tourism complex. But we're also looking at this from a community access standpoint. And how do we best serve our residents within the community? Most of the sports tourism activities tend to fall Friday, Saturday, Sundays, or on the weekends, holidays, things like that. But what are we doing? And a big part of our projections with our original modeling and original assessment had to do with access Monday through Thursday for local residents to be able to participate in practices, games, camps, clinics, drop off in the morning, drop off after school. You want to have resident population nearby the area so that it's easily accessible for parents that are on their way to or from work, kids that are trying to get there before or after school. Having access to this type of a facility is something it's important to have it located in an area that is accessible from the general population. So we again did the 1, 3, and 5 mile drive comparison, 1, 3, and 5 mile distance comparison for each of these sites. And while these numbers are pretty small and tough to read, we've summarized it on the next slide, where we're taking a look at, first and foremost, the population around the South Chase site is higher than each of those around both the Tom Triplett Park and the Port Wentworth site. If you can see the numbers here, it's pretty significant from a 1 mile standpoint. And even a 3 mile standpoint, where you've got roughly 40,000 people that are within 3 miles and 85,000 people within roughly 5 miles of the site. But as you get to that 5 mile distance from all 3 of them, there's a pretty substantial number of individuals that are living within 5 miles of each of these 3 sites, making each one of them a very viable option. In terms of the total number of people under the age of 25, typically the population of people that we're targeting for a sports tourism asset within the community, again, similar to the overall population, there's a higher percentage, a higher total number of people within under the age of 25 that are within 1, 3, and 5 miles of the South Chase site. The area surrounding the South Chase site, interestingly too, has the lowest median average household income among the 3 sites that we looked at. So if in one of the goals that we heard in early conversations with various stakeholders in the community is trying to provide access to underprivileged, underserved community area residents, this might be an opportunity with the South Chase site to be able to provide that access in a community that sorely needs it. Approximately 66% of the households within that area generate income less than $75,000. So it's a significant portion of the population around that area that is a low income or underserved part of the community. From total businesses within 1, 3, and 5 miles of South Chase site surrounding the Tom Triplett Park and Port Wentworth site, there's a lot more businesses around South Chase as well. And the last piece that we looked at is some of the spending from people that are participating in these activities, that are participating in sports and rec activities, entertainment, and admission fees, and average spending on retail goods. So the dollars that are coming in and out of the area, South Chase is a little bit less, if you look at not the nominal figures, but if you divide that nominal figure by the total population in the area, the average spend per person is actually a little bit less than what we see at either the Port Wentworth or the Tom Triplett Park sites. So from a demographic standpoint, we're starting to see some interesting trends in terms of the 3 different sites and the way that we're comparing the 3 of them. So based off of all of that information and similar to the analysis that we did with the site scoring matrix for the feasibility study that we presented to you again a few months back, we whittled it down, and instead of looking at all 7 sites, we just honed in on these 3 sites and reassessed some of those scoring metrics for each of the locations, as you see on this slide. The top 3 sites are still the top 3 sites. There was a flip, though, between the South Chase location and the Tom Triplett Park in terms of 1 and 2, based off of a couple of different things that critically changed. One was the fact that GPA currently owns that site, and having to acquire that site from GPA is maybe a challenge that, as Patrick pointed out, to be able to develop and acquire that site, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. Also from the amenity availability from restaurants, hotels, entertainment spaces, and the nearest hotel properties, the scoring was adjusted to reflect the additional analysis that we conducted here, not only from the accessibility standpoint, but as we're looking at Tom Triplett Park and having to get in and out of that space, it is from a visibility standpoint, from having to drive down that road versus being able to just go right on to the main artery to get access to the various restaurants and hotels. It is visibly and experientially a different point of access. One thing that I oftentimes try to point to, if you go to Las Vegas and are walking up and down the Strip, anybody who's ever been to Las Vegas knows that there's miles and miles of walking that you can do to get from one property to the next. But you see them all right there. They're all within visibility, and you don't feel like there's any long distance that you have to travel. When you go to an area where there is maybe even less of a distance between the 2 spots that you're trying to go to, but there's nothing in between, like the long drive that we would have to take out of Tom Triplett Park to gain access to the roads and to get to our amenities and our hotels, that would be a different experience that we would anticipate seeing from a sports tourism standpoint, as well as from a local participant and resident standpoint to gain access to and from those spaces. So based off of the analysis, the additional analysis that we conducted, this is kind of where we landed in terms of the overall site scoring matrix for these three sites. And that's where we have the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure Patrick is as well.
Comment. Question.
Was transportation to and from the facility considered in the matrix?
In terms of
public transportation?
It was not one that was directly considered as part of the site scoring matrix, no.
Giving more points to South Chase, I think.
Yeah, considering that, I would say that South Chase would score the highest of the three if you consider public transportation access. Really, you would have access along 80, but as Joel was mentioning, it would be a long hike into Tom Triplett Park from there. It is the Fort Wentworth site. Again, it would be a long hike back to there.
What would be the situation with Port Wentworth as far as the property and the ownership of the gym?
So it would have to be a negotiation with the city. As I understand it, the city owns the property, and they're looking to master plan develop that as a sports tourism asset. So there would have to be some sort of discussion with the city in terms of the contribution and the arrangement between the county and the city in terms of developing that site. And as such, the scoring in terms of acquiring the site, there was a hit in the scoring matrix because of that added layer of complexity with negotiating to acquire that site. Whereas, for example, with the South Chase site, we own it, the county owns it, we can start construction on it tomorrow if we wanted to.
As it relates to the site, with 16 acres, would that still allow us enough space to have adequate restrooms, perhaps kitchens, and things that also are more appealing to the sports tourism market?
Yes, certainly. That's all within, Joel, if you can go back to that layout for South Chase. So within that blue box, so that's the gym layout, which is loaded, fully loaded with locker rooms, public restrooms, concession areas. It has a kitchen in there. Sort of the whole idea in terms of developing the floor plan for the gym was to allow for it to be potentially used as an emergency shelter as well. So all of that is within the gym footprint as well. And then you've got room for parking out there. And then there's a little bit of extra room on the site as well for potentially other development.
Patrick, can you speak also to the parking comparison? Are they able to get enough parking spots at the South Chase site?
Yes. Yeah. So this shows a full layout of 650 spaces, which is, when we were doing our initial planning and programming for the facility, that's what we came up with in terms of needs for spaces. So that's a 650 layout for parking there, and so there's even some additional room on the site that you could expand that out if you needed to.
Sites.
Okay, because here's what I'm looking at, here's what I know, all right? If I'm going south on Abercorn, it would be easier to make a right turn into that facility, right? Where we talking about, right by the Lowe's. So, but if I'm coming north, from Georgetown to town, right? The only way to get in there is to turn where you turn in by Chick-fil-A at the Lowe's. That's the left-hand turn, and if you've ever been down there now, that turn lane is already stacked, even before you put this in there. So I'm just concerned that before we are asked to make a decision about all this, traffic study be connected to all of them. All right, I'm just not talking about South Chase site, but I'm talking about all of them because getting in and out is gonna be a problem, especially if you're traveling north. All right? Because you're going to have to cross the other 4 lanes of Abercorn to get in between, and then you're going to have to share that space with Home Depot and Lowe's and the pet shop and whatever else that is up in there. All right? So then you got the traffic coming off of Truman that's turning into right in front of the site. So that's why I say a traffic study's got to be attached before we consider other things. We've got to look at how we're going to get people in and out. And I think that ought to be a part of the scoring matrix. All right? My thoughts.
It's an excellent point, Commissioner. I would add to that, having a high traffic area is a good problem to have, especially both from a community standpoint and from an economic standpoint. People are already used to going to that area for other services, other goods, other activities during their daily life cycle, and it is an area that they traffic from a residential standpoint and from an economic standpoint with the sports tourism angle, with all of the other regional assets that exist in that area. It is a benefit to having that already established around that area. But you're absolutely right. I think that would be a good piece of analysis to continue on as you go further down the road.
If I may, what would the total capacity be if a tournament were to be held at that site? People in the bleachers and watching, what would total capacity be if it was just sold out in full?
So when you...
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Commissioner Kicklighter. in terms of what we had put into the program. But, you know, so if we're figuring, actually, if we're figuring 650 parking spaces, you figure three a car, so that's, you know, close to 2,000.
2,000? Is that an average for these type facilities?
Like as far as
Attendance.
attendees? I think that's a good question. So Commissioner Milton asked if that is an average attendees for these types of events. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask if you'd allow either Jeff Hewitt or Ms. Kristen Smith from the Sports Council to kind of work with these types of events to answer that.
Yeah, because this public forum, so this, yeah, you can, if you all have some input, because one of the things I would think you would, all right, probably just looking at basketball from that standpoint, but suppose we have the volleyball tournament in there, and you got 100 teams. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, I think CSL will be able to speak to that as well, because it depends on what type of event, if it's a national or regional, and there's a lot of data that goes into this. What I will tell you is, coming from an indoor facility that had 6 basketball courts, typically that you could accommodate up to 2,000 people at one given time, and having 12 courts would allow you to have close to 4,000, if not more, depending on how the facility is built. It all depends on how the facility is structured and how much space is actually given for the seating capacity at the venue. So if that's also allotted, then of course you can also increase that number, and then you're also dealing with the fire, whatever the fire marshal code is here in Savannah, Georgia. But I mean, there's a ton of space. These events bring people from all over the country that generate close to $10 million in economic impact per event that comes in, depending on the type of event, right? So each sport, that varies. Volleyball also has a huge role as well. So when you host the sport volleyball, if you have 12 courts at a facility, that also accommodates 24 courts at a facility, which is even larger event, larger amount of teams. But I think this is a great idea, and I think that, you know, wherever you put this, whatever location that it is, and I think that you will also notice that there are hotels that will be developed, and there's restaurants, and there will be new businesses that's not been here before. They will be built here around this venue, and you will see the economic impact. Wherever you decide to put this, I think the key is for the city of Savannah and Chatham County is to build this before any other city builds it here. I also want to make a statement that I've looked at this, and I also think that the indoor track facility would be a huge hit, because that is a huge need for all the colleges in the southeast and across this country, and also could be utilized for USA Track and Field. Youth and amateur sports is a huge hit. We all love professional sports, but amateur youth sports generate more of an economic impact than even the massive events such as the professional sports with NFL. So.
Commissioner West, back to your question.
How many courts is this on here?
It's 12.
Well,
So it's a possibility that they could have 2, maybe 3 things going on at one time?
Yes, ma'am.
yeah.
So in that case, and you got 2,000 people for each event, will seating be allowed for that?
Yes, it does accommodate. I don't know what the schematics are for this venue fully, but there's seating allowed at all these venues. It just depends on how they build the facility.
We can't speak to the seating capacity because we don't know how it's been diagrammed.
In your experience with attending these facilities and games, what kind of crowd do they draw?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, it all ranges. I've been working in this industry for over 11 years in sports tourism, where I've dealt with the SEC. We're currently working with them now, and I also have worked with the NCAA. I've worked with Adidas basketball, Nike basketball. I've worked with a lot of different organizations that generate massive amounts of economic impact in communities and cities, and it's completely revitalized communities. And I also would like to make note that sports tourism is pandemic-proof and recession-free economy. So these businesses will continue to thrive even amidst whatever could, come.
But to answer your question,
Thank you.
for every athlete, there's generally about 3 family members that are attending. Does that?
Well, that kind of narrows it down a little bit, but I don't know how many people are I know how many people are on a basketball team that's on the court, but the ones that are sitting down, they're gonna bring their families too.
Yeah.
And that's going to change by the event and by the status of the event. So if it's an NCAA event, you're going to have a lot more players. If it's an SEC event, you're going to have a lot more spectators. If it's the local volleyball team having a competition, it's going to be friends and family. And so it varies. It really is going to run the full spectrum.
And with all of this that you've got laid out here, and the court and all that, you have not derived at a number of attendee seats.
So, Commissioner, I was just double checking my program notes from when we did the initial programming for the facility. And based on that, the initial building program was based on 1,620 attendees, spectators. Now that was just for the 12 courts. After we did that program, we modified the design to include a premier court with more seating. And so that added about another 500 seats to it. So subtract some out, that ends up, I'm right about at that 2,000, maybe 2,100 seats level. So it wasn't too far out.
Excuse me, Commissioner, it's also important to note that it's not max capacity every single weekend of the year. These volleyball tournaments, basketball tournaments are going to be handled intermittently. There's going to be some of them that are smaller that are using half of the capacity, where you're having local rec leagues and camps and clinics and games and practices on the other half. You're going to have some of them where throughout the year you are going to have the max capacity and you're going to be maximizing your economic impact. And those are citywide events that you guys I would imagine, are very used to with the convention center and the presence in the visitor industry as Savannah and Chatham County is in this area. So,
Chairman, if I may, the reason I asked the question was to kind of back up the chairman's thoughts a little bit. The other night in Pooler, when Savannah Christian played Calvary, they had a backup on the Pooler Parkway for about an hour and a half. People couldn't get in because there was so much traffic and people going into the event. And if we don't do a traffic study, backing up on Abercorn and on the parkway there would be...
That's already backed up.
Exactly. It's already backed up.
That becomes a disaster.
So if I could clarify, we haven't gotten into those details before site selection because that's money, right? That costs money to do traffic studies, and you do that closer when you know how many seats you're looking at and a site selection. But to be clear, like before we broke ground on anything, a traffic study and traffic impact analysis would have to be done on any of these sites.
Well, the point of this meeting, is my understanding, is they wanted us to save the site, right? Was that the point of this?
I'd like to, but.
I'm ready to pick a site. Let's go.
Aaron wanted it built last week.
One of the issues that we wanted to get at, we narrowed it down to the 3 sites, the top 3 sites. We wanted to get y'all this information so y'all can start thinking about it, because sometime soon in the commission meeting, we're gonna have to vote on a site. Because we're kind of in a holding pattern until we pick a site, because we've got to do traffic analysis, we've got to do capacity study, we've got a number of things that we've got to do. We've got to do some address the issues around financing, how we're going to pay for it, the operation costs. So there are a number of things that we're going to have to do, but we can't do those and give you a definitive answer until we have a site. And that's what I wanted to do today, was get you the information. Yes, sir.
How much is the anticipated overall expense to construct this? Minus a price to purchase land.
yeah, I think we were at 55.
About 55 million.
55 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And out of the 55 million, how much does one traffic study cost?
Depending on the scope, you could be anywhere around $10,000.
Okay, so we could do three of them for $30,000, and compared to $55 million being spent, that would be a good $30,000 expense.
If I could add some other reasons why I think this site is the best, not only because it's in the 6th district.
I like the 7th district.
Of course, I ain't mad at you. I ain't mad at you.
Yeah.
So I do know, understanding that Abercorn/204 is a state route. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to traffic calming measures and improvements, we would have to work with GDOT to some degree on that, but they are more of cart before the horse, as we say, right? They have to see the need before they'll actually go forward with it, as opposed to us being proactive. Well, if it's there, it kind of helps. Considering that we already have an issue on 204, we have a study taking place on 204 as we speak, perhaps this would help kind of speed that along. Another thing that comes into play, as the gentleman said, when we talk about emergency operations, we're the counties who's overseeing that. We've been using the Civic Center for so long, but considering that they're going to be tearing that down, if we push this out to Pooler or Port Wentworth, with all due respect, I love those folks, no slight, but the people who normally have to evacuate are very far away from there, not to mention there's limited to no bus access there. Additionally, those who would need to evacuate, it's easier path for them to get them to us, which means less expense on the county to help them get to us. Another thing I think of is just the South Side benefiting from tourism, considering that right now you have downtown. Pooler has Tanger Outlets, which is a big draw, but the South Side doesn't have anything like that. But I think one of the issue that I want to make sure that we keep in mind is that we do have a hotel-motel tax on county hotels, and this facility in South Chase would be right a straight shot from the Gateway, which is where the majority of those county hotels are. Am I correct in that? Those are within the city, so the city.
He's talking about in the county
tax, but they would be paying county bed tax if they're coming right here to South Chase. At least a lot. We could potentially say the same for Pooler, if the site were in Pooler. I think considering that it's a direct shot and understanding that those are where a lot of those double bed capacity rooms are, it also builds another revenue source for us to help with costs, but also just money in general, revenue sources for the county.
And let me add to what Commissioner Whiteley is saying, all right? But I want to make this clear now. I haven't decided on any site, but I'm just looking at the what if, and I think it's worth $30,000 for us to get the traffic study done, because what I'm looking at and what I'm hearing, all right? If you've got 3 people to a car, right? That's 1,800, right? Right, you got 620, 600 and what? Right at 600. 6 parking spaces, all right? Besides the traffic part, what are you gonna do when the numbers get to 2,000 or more? Where's the overflow for that going into now? Are you gonna be able to park in Lowe's, or are you gonna be able to park in Home Depot? Or you see what I'm saying? But here's another thing that you think about too. The South Chase site is closer to central Chatham County. It's more close to the center than the rest of them are, all right? So I mean, and I'm just putting that out there as a factor, but we're gonna have to make that decision as to where we wanna go, but I still think that having the traffic study done, and we don't have to go to GDOT to do the traffic study, all right? We can do the traffic study here. We just tell the staff to do it. You see, let's get that as a part of this presentation so that the day come and hopefully soon that we vote on where the site is and go for it, because we still got to go through schematics of drawing and all the rest so that you know what the capacity is, what the seating is, all right, what the fire marshal going to say, and everybody else, all right? So I'm just saying.
How long does it take for a traffic study?
Months.
Months.
It don't take 18 like the feds do though.
The cost of building this is increasing as we wait, and I guess my biggest fear is that if we, I agree that a traffic study, is in order. I'm not going to negate that, but a fear of mine is that we see a traffic study and just get alarmed at the what ifs, but going anywhere else, well, I guess potentially 80 is a state route, so we would get GDOT support there. I don't want us to run away from the citizens who could benefit from this, at least based on what the report says. The citizens who would benefit from this at least the most, or at least lack the means to be able to move further around, are right here near this site. So by us prolonging it, potentially pushing it further away from lower income communities, I think ultimately we're shooting ourselves in the foot to some degree, because my understanding that the initial intention was to have something that the entire community could benefit from. But if we put this somewhere that does not have an existing bus route, that if we put this somewhere where we're going to have to negotiate costs or some sort of agreement to purchase the land, which adds more time onto it, the cost of this facility would go from 50-something million even higher.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just say that if you're worried about the bus and the transportation part of it, Chatham Area Transit is looking to expand services. So I wouldn't discount it a location based on there's no CAT service at this point. That doesn't mean it won't be by the time this is built. So I just don't want to eliminate a site based on public transportation, because Chatham Area Transit is already talking to the Hyundai people to get an express bus there and back. So Chatham Area Transit is addressing all the issues as they come forward. So don't eliminate.
Plus they're in negotiation with both Poole and Port Wentworth, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So not only that, but they're willing to go wherever there's demand call.
There's a demanding pooler. Cat wants to go there, but it's it takes two to tango. Mike, I'll ask, in our last storm evacuation process, right? And Mike and Linda, I know I'm asking you to dig deep here, but roughly, if you took out how much, maybe there's an IGA with City of Savannah to use the Civic Center, but when it came to getting people who needed to be evacuated to the staging site, and so on and so forth, could you estimate a cost of what that was for us?
We had a big bill from.
That's 1.6 million.
Well, that was to get people out of town. You're talking about just getting.
I'm just saying getting them to there.
He's talking about
the
CAT.
6 million was total?
Yeah, it's about 1.6 million.
When we chartered those buses on that last
to get people.
He's not talking about the one that went out.
He's not talking about
But the one that moved people from one point of the county to the Civic Center. I don't think we separated it out like that.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
Together couldn't settle.
I think the transportation was $6 million.
Total.
Total.
Get them up to
But
And
now,
I will make this point, if you're talking about for a shelter, I mean, the further west you go is the best place for a shelter.
No, I'm not talking about for shelter. I'm talking about for staging. When we had to evacuate, they didn't stay in the Civic Center. They staged at the Civic Center and left them there.
Economically, it would be a bigger benefit for that area on the south side because of its changes over the last years. It would benefit them to have something of that magnitude to help spur some positive stuff going on there again. I think it would be good for the children in that area. But $10,000 for a traffic study.
And I was just about to say, and if I could correct myself, if we're just looking at that one intersection, we could probably get away with 10,000. Likely, GDOT and the city will have us do a corridor study, and then you could be looking at 100, 200. We just signed a contract to do that 204 study for $330,000. So if they have us expand that out to the corridor, which likely they will, you could be looking at more than 10. I mean, you could be looking at a couple $100,000 for traffic.
and we're talking about 55 million plus.
55 million, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, versus $250,000 per study.
Yeah.
So that's still some.
And the point he made about the parking, it would be really embarrassing to have a tournament so big that we couldn't even park the people. I mean.
That'd be a great problem to have.
I mean, it would be a great one, but it would be one we would definitely hear about.
Now, normally those traffic studies wouldn't be done after that's part of the design. That's part of the design cost. So normally when we get the site, we would do all those studies.
So we're gonna do it anyway?
And not to be.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do it anyway for one site.
Site, if it comes back that it's so terrible, then we could kick it and go to another site and get this thing moving. We've been talking about this project for many, many, many years. At least I have been. And so I wanted to make that point. The second point I want to make is, if you look at that map, and if you're familiar with that area, as I travel it often, that's a 6-lane road and divided highway. In comparison, if we go to Memorial Stadium, we just built a facility very recently that has a seating capacity of 5,000, plus all the players and all the other stuff. And it's got 2 4-lane roads nearby and several 2-lane roads nearby. And somehow it carries that capacity for 5,000 seats. So, just back of the envelope, looking at it in comparison to another facility that we have, and yeah, some games are a lot better attended than others, but it works. I mean, they design it, it works. Some days it's real crowded, which is very festive, and everybody has a great time, and they understand you gotta wait a few more minutes to get in and out.
Is there a tailgating room out there?
650 spots, that's a lot of room.
Let me ask to do this and see if you all will agree. Let's have the staff, because Janice has recorded everything. Let's have the staff get us the answers to those questions, and then let's get together and make a determination on the site.
Why not staff give us an estimate of how it will be funded?
Right.
How much it would actually cost annually and where that money would come from.
They're working on
before we spend $10,000 for a traffic study, before we spend another penny.
This is the SPLOST project.
We need to know, I mean, this is great. Well, hell, let's build us an NFL stadium while we're at it. I mean, how are we gonna fund this?
And that goes into some of the workflow. We had anticipated that y'all would come to some resolution on the site. We still have to come back to you with the financial analysis because, number one, we don't have cash in hand. We're going to have to either bond it or some financial instrument to build the site. So all that's coming. We're working on it now.
So when we paid off the Mighty 8 at $18 million, we were paying approximately $2 million a year back then on that bond. So if we're talking 50, we're talking, if we even stayed, which we're probably at I don't know the interest rate then or now, but we're looking at $4 or $5 million a year.
Yes, sir.
You are.
On a payment.
5 or 6.
Yeah, $5 or $6 million a year. Hit.
For 20 years.
Yeah.
So I want
years, and
we got 17 in SPLOST.
Right. And when we, as a county, I wasn't here at the time, but when we as a county decided to do this, back when SPLOST 7 was, developed, was that a concern at that point?
We did not anticipate a 12-court gym.
Right.
The proposal was to build 2 gym structures in different parts of the county that would also have a sheltering component to them. So you could put one on this side, and then you could put the other one in Port Wentworth, just for example. And that was where the 17.
That's where the 17 million came in.
Yeah. It was just to handle, some recreational needs and that shelter component.
Gotcha.
When is the next SPLOST cycle coming up?
2026.
So,
Wentworth is getting ready to do a bond for 2 gyms.
Garden
$8
City.
million.
yeah.
Garden City.
Garden
City.
So my point is if we can get this thing started, and we're not like the arena, which took 30 years to ever get it built because it kept lots of things, concerns came up, and you know, all kind of concerns. It just took 30 years to get done. You know, to keep this thing moving, I think it's a great idea to pick a site and get started on it. SPLOST coming up in 26, if we were so lucky as to have a project coming out of the ground that we bonded, I would think that once the folks in this community saw this fantastic vision that the county commissioners have of putting this facility right smack dab in the center of Chatham County, they're going to vote for it. They're just, I mean, I just truly believe that the most excited constituents and residents of the county that I saw, the only thing they talked about was Memorial Stadium. They really care that we spent a little under $100 million for a jail expansion? No. Are they anybody besides the courthouse crowd getting excited that we spent $76 million on a courthouse? No. What are they going to get excited about? What are they going to like? What are we going to like? We're going to like someplace fun for our kids and something that, you know, it's a great festival type atmosphere, and we're going to create it. The 9 people sitting up here have the potential to create this. So I say let's roll. Let's go with something. Let's get it going.
Data doesn't lie.
All right. Any more questions? Any more comments? Any more? All right. So you'll prepare the report, and then we'll put it on the agenda, and we'll decide what we're gonna do. All right. Okay. Let's move on.
Thank you.
The next
Thank you
item
all.
on our-
Appreciate it.
Next item on our agenda is options to look at the special service district. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kramer, and she's got a brief presentation for you, and we'll be able to answer any questions you may have.
Hey, y'all take a nice meeting, y'all.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be talking.
I can't believe they're not staying for this discussion on this. In the world.
Got to get up.
Check, I can't remember. Okay. All right, SSD. First, we're going to talk a little bit about how we got where we are in SSD, and then we're going to look at some options for the SSD. And you can see on this slide the history of the Special Service District. So the Special Service District is the unincorporated county. It is a special district that was established in 1974. And in 1970, just to give you context, there were 24,000 people that were in the unincorporated area, 24,000 residents. Today we have 91,000 residents in the SSD. In 1974, the board, when they set the SSD up, they did that so that they could have a dedicated millage rate for the services that were being provided to the unincorporated area citizens. And I kind of think in the back of my mind that they may have set this up so that they could establish a county police department instead of having the sheriff manage police services. Doesn't really say that in the minutes, but and the minutes were very brief back then, right? They don't have a lot of description, and it is the district is governed by all of you, but it does not have the same rights as a municipality does, which is one of the issues that we hear a lot from some of the commissioners here. So why are we here? Some of you have asked whether we can modify the SSD fund and/or decrease its millage rate or eliminate the SSD fund altogether. Chatham County is one of the very few counties in the state of Georgia with a SSD fund for its unincorporated area. Most of the counties in Georgia includes unincorporated area activities in their general fund, except that fire districts are special districts outside of that, where a lot of counties levy a mill rate on a fire district. So that's kind of what we tend to see. If you go through county budgets, you'll see the general fund, and then you're going to see, especially in counties with a lot of unincorporated areas, you're going to see those tax districts for different fire departments that are in that county.
How many counties in Georgia have that?
Well, there are 159 counties in Georgia, and we have 6 with the SSD.
So a very small percentage even do that. Very small.
But on the fire, I don't know. I'd have to go through and look at the fire. I know Cherokee, Amy, y'all had fire districts when you were at Cherokee County. Yeah, it's pretty common. Okay, our SSD right now, we have a $47 million budget for 2023, and that included an indirect cost plan expense that was paid by the SSD to the general fund for administration. That's like things like payroll, workers' comp, facilities, those sort of administrative services that the general fund provides. In 2024, our budget right now is $50 million for the SSD, and we did take that as Commissioner Farrell has advocated to all of you. We took that indirect cost allocation out of the budget. And that was initially $3.5 million in the budget. The fund is healthy. We have our 30% reserve, which is $15 million in fund balance, and our millage rate is 4.5, which compares pretty close to the other municipalities in the county in terms of a mill rate. We have the largest revenue in the SSD is the ad valorem property taxes. And that's the same as most counties. You know, counties are set up so that the ad valorem property taxes are your largest revenue source in the general fund, and in our case, also in the special service district. We also receive some other revenues, insurance premium taxes, which you've heard about a lot related to fire services. We have a budget of $7 million for that. We have a agreement with City of Savannah on the Recorder's Court and the operations of the Recorder's Court. And we spend a little bit over $1 million each year on Recorder's Court, but we do get most of that back in fee revenues from the court. We also get title ad valorem tax. Do you guys know what that is? That's your car tags. You know, that used to be in the property tax digest. And then the state changed that whole system. And for a while, we had TAVIT coming in, and it was going to, I think, the general fund and one of the SPLOST funds, but then the state changed the law again. And now that money comes back to us at the county based on where people live. So municipalities get those funds directly from the state. And the county also gets those funds directly from the state, and it goes into the SSD. And then we have a little bit of hotel and motel tax money. That's gotten a little bit better from a revenue perspective since we picked up Airbnbs. So we get about $1 million from that. And then we have some other revenues that are self-sustaining. Business licenses, they pay for themselves. And some false alarm money.
Before you go on to expenditures, I don't see the part in the revenue that we don't get.
I did not put that in here.
That's the most important part of this whole conversation, is that the revenues that unincorporated people pay in and do not participate. The TAVIT tax is a perfect example of a fair tax. The folks in the unincorporated area get their fair share, okay? People in Savannah get their fair share. People in Thunderbolt get their fair share. People in Thunderbolt buy a car, their money goes back to Thunderbolt. No problem. Great situation. A very important slide that is missing here is the local option sales tax. All those folks in the unincorporated area pay local option sales tax, but they are categorically denied not one penny for the benefit of the unincorporated area, not one penny. So that number is extremely important to be up there. I'm surprised it's not. The second extremely important number is your franchise fees. Everybody in the unincorporated area that has an electric meter, and I dare to say probably every one of them does, pays a franchise fee. That money goes to Atlanta, they get a little cut, and they send it back. But instead of sending it to the unincorporated benefit of those citizens, it goes to all the cities. So the unincorporated residents are subsidizing the cities of this county, which is a great thing for those 200,000 people. I mean, what's not to like? There's also a franchise fee on natural gas. So if you have a meter going to your house and you use gas, and it's not, propane, you'll pay a franchise fee, and the same thing happens. So the unincorporated residents are paying their fair share, but they are getting not their fair share in revenue and franchise fees, the 2 franchise fees and the lost. And if those numbers were up there, you would find out very quickly that those numbers far outgo that property tax number. And this has been going on for years and years and years, and nobody says a word about it. And it's not right, it's not fair, and it's not how we should be conducting business in Chatham County. It should be a level playing field where everybody pays their fair share and receives their fair share.
Chairman, I just want to say off of that, and we obviously, us two agree wholeheartedly on this, and we're intending, well, thankfully, we brought it forward here tonight. That's not even talking about the 6th penny of sales tax that we pay, which is the SPLOST, Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, which the state of Georgia law will not allow us to collect 1 penny of that for the 100,000 people living in the unincorporated area. That's millions of dollars for capital improvements every year that they don't get. And they're paying into it. And everybody else in the county gets it, no matter if they're in a city or what, no matter which city, they're getting that back. And then they're getting it back to the portion the county gets, because the portion the county gets has to be utilized for the whole county. We can't collect that 6th penny. And especially since we realized that the 6th penny could actually be utilized for more than capital improvements. It could be for major maintenance issues. I mean, it really is another revenue that is offsetting of property taxes. Millions of dollars every single year those folks, they pay and they don't get. Just don't take into account the 8th penny, which if ever passed in Chatham County is the T-SPLOST. Transportation SPLOST. State law will not allow us to get 1 penny for the unincorporated area. All the cities are going to divvy up the millions. The county will get millions, but it'll be for the whole county. And it is an absolute disaster. And I appreciate the work y'all put into that, but Commissioner Farrell's totally right. This is a one-sided, this is not showing remotely what the whole story is. And if you were to take and give them the monies that they pay in, like if they were treated like a city, they would absolutely wouldn't need a property tax at all. We wouldn't need the SSD portion of the budget.
You would probably eliminate the property, if you eliminated the property tax, that would probably be equal to your lost revenue that goes into the general fund. But the problem is, by law, we are where we are. So, and the state has the first 4% of the first 4 pennies, then you've got lost, that's the 5th penny. Then you've got SPLOST, and we do have a list of unincorporated projects in our SPLOST program. That is.
Specifically for unincorporated, just like.
No, it just goes into the SPLOST fund. Yeah.
It's for everybody.
For every project, yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
The loss,
And that's why,
is for everybody.
And that's why if we eliminate the special service district as a ad valorem tax, just that part, the ad valorem tax, if you get to that point, then you have leveled the playing field as best as we can as a group of 9 commissioners.
Yeah, and
This SSD is a creation that started 49 years ago, and it had the greatest intentions, and it was fair to all concerned at the time. But we continue as human beings, we like to do the same thing over and over. I'm guilty of it too. And it's sometimes you just got to stop and say, why are we doing this? Does it still make sense? And under the current situation with lost and franchise fees, the numbers, which it's need to be up there for everybody to see. Maybe you got those numbers in your head and you could at least tell us what they are. I know I've had you figure this for the last 10 years. Every year it gets worse as a discrepancy to the unincorporated residents. So all residents pay M&O tax. Unincorporated people pay M&O tax. So if there's just one M&O ad valorem tax, which they are paying in, matter of fact, they're not only paying their fair share, the breakup is usually the same every year, but Linda could confirm, a third of the folks in the county live in the unincorporated area, and those third of the folks generate 40% of the M&O tax. So there's another pocket of money. You can't fix all the leaks in the boat, but you can fix one big leak, and it'll be a huge improvement to the fairness of taxation, which this group in this room can do if they want to.
And I just want to say, we were blaming, I was blaming the state all this time. And I sounded like I was blaming the state earlier. The state won't allow us to collect for this, won't allow us to collect for that. But it's not the state's fault, folks. There's 6 out of 159 counties. They do it that way, 6 out of 159. Why would the state of Georgia change the law
for 6?
Pick off 150 counties for doing it within their parameters to please one group of people that chooses to do it for some other reason another way. Clearly, I pulled up on the ACCG.org, purposes of taxation. You can, through the M&O on county, this is all county, is you can pay expenses of administration of county government, cover the cost of collection and preservation of records, blah, 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 blah. It goes down to say county roads, fire protection, a county police department, sheriff's department. It's got them listed here.
Everything.
That's what all the other counties do, except for 6.
Except for us.
We're one of those 6 that are screwing over 100,000 people in our district. And it's nothing that we did, because we didn't create this silly, horrible way of doing it. And Pat and I aren't recommending that we kick the crap out of all the city county residents. We're simply recommending a phase-in over time, utilizing the digest increase every year, absorb it in, offset some of the cost until it's gone. We could absorb the fire fee coming up with this one thing, and rather than not having to, because if we don't do this, somebody on here at this point, it ain't gonna be me, they're gonna have to vote to increase the taxes on these people in the SSD, in the unincorporated area. If we do what we need to do, we will not have to do that, and we will not have to increase the rest of the county's taxes either. It would absorb in, and we can do it, and we can phase it out. With the resolution we were trying to put forward, is basically just saying a good faith thing at this point. It's saying we intend on trying to we intend to move forward and phase it in as we can with the increases without raising taxes.
And the only thing we're asking today, there's a lot of great information in here, but the only thing that's really asking is do away with the SSD budget and eventually over time figure out how to reduce that. Go back to that other slide, please.
We're gonna go through all that.
Go back to the other slide. The one, no, the ad valorem one.
I've got an ad valorem one in here I want to show you.
Well, I want to talk about the one that's already up there. That ad valorem property tax, 28.8 million. We're not talking about eliminated on day one. Okay? We're simply asking, I think Dean and I have articulated, we want to go to one budget. I think that'll save accounting over time. The first year, it's always very tumultuous, of course, when you change something. But have one budget. We'll supplement it with ad valorem tax from the SSD until such time as we can go through all this facts and figures and figure out how to gradually reduce it to zero, would be the goal. You know, we don't want to cause hardship for anybody, and we certainly are not asking for a handout or special favoritism to a certain group of people. But we are asking for a fair handling of taxes on these citizens in our county, and we have the power to do that right here in this room.
Just like the other 153 of 159, or 52, whatever did the math.
Because they already know the math.
They do it right. And we
They
should
do it
join
right.
them in doing it right. We are messing over these people. And again, for a long time, I gladly laid the blame on the state for not allowing us to collect for them. No, we're doing it wrong. It's not the fact that
We can't swim against Niagara Falls.
Exactly.
We can swim upstream a little bit, but we can't overcome Niagara Falls, and that's basically what we're trying to do here, and it's just not.
Yeah, we didn't cause it, but we can fix it.
Yep.
Well, I don't think we're doing anything wrong. I think we're just doing things the way they've been done. So, you know, how do you change that up to where, you know, there's not a lot of harm caused to the other 200,000 residents of the county that are not in that incorporated area, and I think that's what we're talking about. Okay, so these are the expenditures in the SSD, and a lot of this I'm just doing to make sure everybody understands, you know, what we're talking about. Commissioner Lockett, you and that phone.
You better be glad we let the sheriff
I know. She's back there. Coming to get him.
He got his one reprieve. Continue your lunch.
Anyway, here's what we're spending money on in the SSD. We got building safety. A lot of that is business licenses, code enforcement. We give a little bit of money to Crime Stoppers. We have a budget in engineering of about $1.8 million for staff. We have a person that administers false alarms for the police. She pays for herself. We have the MPC, SAGES, Historic Preservation activities, police, which is about $20 million now, Public Works, Recorder's Court, that one's self-supporting, traffic lights, and then we have transfers out. Now, what am I talking about with transfers out? Just like you were saying a minute ago, we're moving money to other funds. So where are we putting the money? We've got money going to the curbside solid waste fund. We've been transferring money out to the fire fund this past year. We have money going to risk management, and most of that is for claims and workers' compensation expenses, which are not charged directly to the departments. We have a little bit of money going to LDAO. The store fund is getting a little bit of money because the rate increases, Amy, in the store fund that would be needed to balance that are pretty prohibited, I think. So we've got some transfers there, and then we do have money going to the capital improvement fund from the SSD for projects in that fund. Land disturbing activities ordinance. It's the ordinance that is administered through the engineering department. It's not an impact fee, it's a set of fees that Suzanne can tell you all about. we'll do that another day. Okay. So we talked about all this already. Certain functions generate enough fees to cover their services. Insurance premium tax. Now that is a tax that has statutory limitations on its use. We've been using it historically for police. It has to be used for public safety, but it can also be used for fire, and that was brought up by CES when we started talking with them about using that revenue to supplement the fire fund. So that's 6 months when we didn't bill anybody a fire fee. That was January through June 2022 when y'all told CES don't bill anybody. And we used $6 million for to cover that spread, and that was from insurance premium taxes. And then we have those other revenue sources, some of which are provided only to the unincorporated area, like CCPD, Crime Stoppers, Fire, and Public Works.
Are there any other, I understand dry trash is the enterprise fund. Are there any other services that are provided to the unincorporated Chatham County with the exception of these ones that are listed here?
Yeah, there would be street lighting, and that goes on the bill, their property tax bill directly.
Or just by the people that
Yeah, it is.
benefit. So that's not really part of the big picture. That's a very.
But it is provided, and it is on their bill. We talked about rolling that in and changing how we do that. Suzanne had come up with a proposal a couple of years ago. But right now, it's a separate fund. You have a whole fund for it. And it's invoiced once a year with the $85 curbside fee. And we have some funds that have fees in them, like 911. You know, that's countywide. It's $1.50 that comes on everybody's bill every month. And that money is used for 911. So we have some funds, other funds like that. Yeah, it's cell phones too. Okay, here's the tax digest numbers. Can y'all read that? So this is, we got the general fund tax digest here, and we've got this in millions of dollars. Okay, so we got $25 billion of value countywide in the gross digest in the general fund. That's everybody in the county. In the unincorporated area, we got $10.5 billion. And then the next line is exemptions. We get this data every year from the tax commissioner. That is the tax digest. That's what we use to compute the property taxes that we use in the budget. And in June, you guys set your millage rate, and that's applied to the tax digest. So these numbers are coming from Board of Assessors. $25 billion general fund, less exemptions of almost $7 billion, leaves you about $19 billion in net digest value in the general fund. If you compute that with the tax rate, that gives you $198 million in property tax. Okay, that's in general fund. Now, if you look over at the unincorporated area, we've got net digest is $6.4 million, and we've got that $28.8 million is the net property tax. The tax rates are 10.518, general fund, unincorporated 4.5. But because we always talk about the millage rate and the value of a mill, because the digest is lower in the unincorporated area, the value of one mill is going to be less. So you've got $6.4 million is the value of one mill. And in the general fund, that's 18.9. Value of one mill. So one thing, when you look at this and you look at the property taxes in the SSD and you compare that to the value of one mill, you could see that $28.8 million minus one mill would be, if you wanted to put this, it would take about 1.5 mills to wipe out that property tax in the SSD.
How much on average over the past 3 years has it increased, the tax digest increased in the M&O?
I'd have to go back and look. Last year, obviously, I think it's increased every year, but last year it went up pretty quick because of the warehouses coming on. All that building that's going on the west side. I can get you that.
Okay, that's really important because that's the whole point of what we're saying.
That's how you put the sugar with the pill to make the medicine go down, is using tax digest growth.
Yeah.
It still doesn't, I mean, you know, honestly, it should be done no matter what the millage rate is right away because it's not fair. But, you know, trying to smooth the deal, you could use tax digest growth to make it more palatable for everyone concerned. But the root problem is just a very,
What was it, Amy, like 10% general fund this year?
I think the year before that it was 16, but years before that it was around 5.
Which is still a significant amount.
SSD digest was only like 2.
Yeah, SSD is very, not even 2, I don't think. I think it was 1.5 increase.
Here we go.
Yeah.
This is general fund 2021. The tax percentage increase was 4.9%, 4.6% in 2022, and then 10.4% in 2023. That's general fund. Okay. And then on SSD, it was 4% in 2021, 0.3% in 2022, and 8.1% in 2023. So, and we do, SEED is very active, and we do have a lot of abatements. And what those are, the deals that they've cut with different industries to come here.
Now, do they all have a 10-year lifespan, or are they?
I don't know. They're all different.
Well,
they're not 10 years.
Are they less? Are they more?
Less, some are more.
Okay.
One other thing that this proposal will help make fair is the fact of right now, state law allows the cities to do the hodgepodge annexations and allows them to leave the roads to us being these kind of folks that live in the unincorporated area over here and fund this SSD budget. They take all the good money, good taxes, develop it there. They get their taxes in the other cities, and they leave the unincorporated area residents the road, paying for it at the very least. And we had a productive meeting last night with a bunch of state reps there, and I think they're going to try to at least look into something as far as maybe changing annexation laws where it has to be a contiguous line like it used to be, which would help the hodgepodge stuff. But at the very least, if it continues the way it has been, it's an easier pill to swallow because everybody's paying to maintain those roads at that point, not just the unincorporated area people. And it's just really done wrong, and we can fix it, and it's really easy and clear cut.
I will agree that is wrong. I don't want to be wrong, but I think I agree with that's wrong. So we didn't really know what y'all wanted to see today, so we came up with some options here for SSD. The first one is is aimed at reducing the millage rate. So keep everything like it is, and as that growth comes in, try to roll that millage rate back. So we're going to go into more detail on this. So that's option one. Option two, move funds from the general fund to the SSD fund annually to pay for SSD services, and this is taking that digest growth in the general fund and moving it over to the SSD in the form of a transfer. So you're transferring money out from general fund over to the SSD fund where there's a transfer in, and then you're using that to reduce your dependence on the property tax digest there. 9.3 is the other way. Move those revenues and expenses from the SSD fund over to the general fund, and I think that's what I heard you say a minute ago, Commissioner Farrell, that you would move things over from SSD to the general fund like other counties have done. and then you could leave direct services in the SSD, like police or fire, or you could try to move everything over. And we'd have to do a legal review, obviously, on that.
Be just to eliminate the SSD budget, have one budget, subsidize it with SSD. I mean, you're gonna get all the SSD, all those numerous taxes will go directly into the general fund. And with the goal over time to reduce the millage rate, the big number, the 28.8 million, remove the ad valorem tax off the SSD folks and absorb it into the M&O budget. And that could very well be done over time with using tax digest growth. And it wouldn't be a disruption to the whole citizens of the whole county. So I think, but step one is do we direct staff to go to one budget? These are a lot of details, and I'm not kidding anybody. It's going to be tumultuous for the finance department. But you see all those awards on that wall? I have great faith that if we give them direction, they'll figure it out, because they got a whole army of financiers up there, and they can work out all these details how we get there. But we, as a commission, have to put it out there what direction we want to go in. And I think the big question for today in this budget workshop is, do we direct staff to create one budget for next year, and then over time, you know, not to eliminate the ad valorem tax all in one fell swoop. That's a pretty big ask, although I will ask it if y'all are willing. But just go to one budget. I mean, and then we can flesh out how we're going to get there. And it is going to be difficult, and it's going to put a lot of extra strain on them. But I think once we do it, they'll probably like it a lot better. At least when I discussed this with Russ Abolt many years ago, he said, I'd love to have one budget. Make things a lot simpler than having two parallel budgets, and I have to, always be working things around. So I think that's the question for us today is, do we direct staff to go there or not?
If I may on that, I'm thinking that step 9-1, let's say we get a 4% increase in the M&O tax digest. Roll, what is 4% on the M&O increase? How many millions is that?
About eight and a half.
8.5 million? Then roll 8.5 million off the SSD millage rate. And you do that until it's gone, and then you've not raised anyone's taxes and you've eliminated it, no pain to anyone.
I think you're going to this option on that. So
But like I say, step one is just have one budget, and then
you couldn't do that because they're still going to have to tax the unincorporated, the difference. In other words, that increase will be 8 million. We still owe 50 million.
Then we take the SSD and throw it into the M&O like all the other taxes.
Then the taxes do go up.
All right, let me ask both of y'all a question.
They go down.
Let me ask both of you all a question. All right? And this is one of the things now, just like we saw the tax digest was here, right, and it was moving like this, and all of a sudden it did this, right? Now suppose it reversed itself. What are you gonna do?
Then you're not going to be able to phase it that year.
See, and that's what we need to know, that we need to be careful of what we're doing. All right. I'm not advocating for one way or the other. All right, but I'm saying, just like they do projected budgets, all right, and they say, okay, we're projecting we're gonna get this money, but then it falls short. That means you got to go back in and recut. You got to cut some stuff. So I'm just saying we need to be careful because, listen, the feds and those are talking about recessions, mini recessions, and all the rest. So I'm just saying, suppose now it flip up in our favor, and that's where we are now, right? But suppose it reverse itself, and we done decided that we done pass a resolution that we gonna do this and phase it in. Now what you gonna do?
May I answer that?
Reduce.
May I answer that, sir?
Sure.
Okay. So, again, simply put, I'm asking for one budget, not changing the SSD millage. Each year that there's a budget, we instruct staff to try and work at whatever pace. It may be that we have great tax digestion, we can beat this thing out in no time. Or it may be so flat that it takes 10 years or 8 years or 7, however long it takes. Each budget year, you analyze it, but the commissioners give direction to staff to work on bringing that millage rate in the SSD to 0 so that it's fair to everybody. And that's why I said, this year, they got a whole year to do the budget. I'm asking, Dean's asking, have one budget, transfer all the money from the TABIT tax and the business license, all that stuff into the M&O. Okay, just put all that money into that bank account. And whatever property tax we have to levy next year to balance the budget in the SSD, we'll do it. But with the goal, and no hard stops, no hard, we gotta do this, but, let's have a goal, maybe 3 years. That's optimistic. But maybe it takes 7, whatever. But we start on that path to right a 49-year-old.
What's up?
And we're going to have the other I know what both of y'all want to do, but we're going to have the ones with municipalities. With municipalities, y'all are the ones I need to know from if you want to go this way, because it is going to impact the general fund in some manner. It will in some manner impact the general fund. And I'm going to let Michael talk about why I'm saying that.
Now, no,
It doesn't impact the fund.
I don't think we're saying that, sir. For the rest of the board, I don't think we're saying that. And there's nothing wrong with what you and Commissioner Kicklight are saying. There's nothing wrong with it. Nobody's wrong. But I want y'all have this to take with you. I want you to look at this slide here. As your manager, y'all pay me to worry about how this budget's going to look in future years. We've got a lot of things coming up that's going to hit us in the face. We're getting ready to make sure to move into a new trial court building. We don't know what the operating costs that's going to be. We're getting ready to build the emergency operations center at the airport. That's more operating expense. That debt service on the gymnasium, before we retire the debt out of SPLOST, finance staff is estimated between $5.5 and $6 million debt service annually on that. We've got that. We've had to sink a lot of money on Hudson Island. We're still not through with that. We've got a new child and adolescent treatment facility that we're getting ready to build. Hopefully the state's going to give us the money to build it, but we're going to have some operating funds for it. We're going to have, once we move out of the current Coleman Courthouse and move Superior Court and State Court and the DA out of there, we're going to have to do some renovations to the current facility. The judges have already been before y'all asking to fund those positions with the ARPA funds. They want them permanent in next year's budget. And just the list goes on and on. So all I'm saying is, you're not wrong. I just said we just need to be cautious as to how we proceed with that. And that's my issue.
And that dovetails perfectly into what I'm asking. One budget, work it in as best you can, as rapidly as you can, without upsetting the apple cart. That's all. It's just a policy shift. Let's not go the same route we've gone for 49 years. Let's tilt the ship a little bit towards a fair balance of the scale and get the thumb off the scale that's been on there for all those decades. Take the thumb off and work it out where it becomes a more fair system to all the folks in the county.
And I think that one of the options we had on there, and I think Commissioner Farrell, we talked about it, was doing increasing the exemption on the residential properties in the SSD. So eventually that exemption would take the ad valorem tax to 0. So there are a number of different ways we could do that. But
staff needs the direction from this board. which direction to go.
I think we understand that y'all want to eliminate the millage rate and the SSD. We heard that loud and clear, and I think that's where we're going. My caution is we can't get there too fast.
I'm not putting any,
Michael, I want to
putting any brackets on when to do it. I just want the board to consider directing staff to go to one budget and to eventually get that 28.8 million down to zero.
Can we
to compensate for the revenues that were not shown, that were not given over to the SSD, which
if we could phase it out to zero, then go to the one budget.
And I think somehow we confused each other. I envision an SSD budget, your M&O budget, $50 million SSD. Say the tax digest comes in and gives $20 million more for the M&O. I envision taking 15 of that, putting it over here off of the 50, so you're down to 35 million, and you got a 5 million increase to do a little bit, whatever, a little bit more with pay or whatever, because things do go up. And doing that for a few years in a row until you take that digest to zero, then it's gone. Get rid of at that point, I get that there's no way to possibly eliminate it this moment without increasing everybody's taxes and that, but phasing it, like I just said, it can be done. And we look at it year by year, Michael, and if it increased 1%, then, oh my God, as a good gesture, let's give 1/100th of that percent to reducing the SSD. I mean, it's just a goal to work towards. Like we said, we want that $50 million basketball court. Jeez. I mean, you got to start, and that's all we're asking is to start moving in the right direction here and not to kill anything. I mean, and by the time it's really kicking in, that might be a whole new board that says, oh, heck no. But at least it's a start moving in the right direction. That's all we're asking.
I have a question. So of the options that you put up there, do one of them lead to more of an M&O budget increase than the other potentially?
Now, I don't want to say that would be the case. From a staff perspective, I think we've heard y'all loud and clear. You want to decrease the millage rate in M&O. So eventually you'll have where the M&O budget will decrease as M&O budget would increase based on the digest growth, and the SSD budget would decrease by some amount.
You're moving the SSD expenses to the general fund. So that budget will go up, and it'd probably be like 9.3 on this one, except that you're gonna move all the functions over to the general fund.
Well, and so
exactly it.
Doing that, and then if we just have the contingency as to if there's no digest increase or growth or negative, digest.
Or we have stuff we have to.
Then we don't adjust the SSD that fiscal year.
Exactly.
But you make that call, because annually we're gonna come to you with a budget, and you'll know what the growth is, so you'll know what we're rolling back in the SSD.
Well, I was just going to throw this out there and see if this would be something that would be acceptable to you guys, because some functions, such as the police and public works maintenance, are very much just unincorporated, and I have a feeling that we might have problems if we try to get the entire county to pay for those services. They may say, well, why don't we have a countywide police? We should be doing maintenance on all of the roads in the county. So would it be something that y'all would be...
With all due respect.
Would you be open to the idea of something like a public safety fund?
No. With all due respect, every other county in the state of Georgia, other than 6, does it what must be the right way when it's 150-something doing it one way.
And I agree totally. Cherokee County had, their sheriff did the police, but we did not have an unincorporated village. But the problem is we've been doing it this way for 40 years. And they have been paying for those services individually for 40 years. And I think now, going back the other way, you may have citizens in cities that might complain.
If someone's child had been being beat by her husband for 40 years, wouldn't the parents say, get yourself out of that situation? I mean, or would you just stay? No, I mean, would you just stay because it's been happening 40 years?
Punching bag for 40 years.
If something's going on 40 years, it's time to fix it. And
here's what I worry about as your chairman, all right? I worry about Commissioner Lockett, Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Whiteley, and Commissioner Milton, who has to go to their constituents, who got both. They got SSD and M&O, all right? And they want to say, well, why are you going to reduce theirs, but you gonna keep ours up here? And see, I'm saying that because as y'all go, I go, because they're my constituents too. I just want us to make sure.
Can I tell you how,
okay,
Chairman?
But let me finish. I just want to make sure that before we decide to put something on the agenda and vote it in, that we know what we're doing and we don't do like, and I hate to use this, but I'm gonna have to use it, like we did with the fire fee. How we came up, this is how we're gonna do it at first, then I had to come back and say, nope, can't do it that way. We're gonna change this from A to D, all right? I just want us to make sure, and I want us to be very sure that what we're doing will accomplish the goal that we're setting, but it will do it so that it will not come back and we have to go back and make a readjustment. See, because one of the things that folks have to know, the public have to know when we talk about budgets, there's always a white elephant in the room, all right? The last white elephant we had was called Matthew. When I was sitting here, when we had to, amen, them were jumping through hoops and hollers and everything else, trying to move money from scratch to scritch, all right? To make sure that we could cover, even though FEMA had said, okay, y'all covered, but it took them about 5 or 6 years to get us that money back. But we were up here shuffling and shuffling and shuffling and reshuffling, trying to cover, all right? You always gotta be present with those things in mind, all right?
Okay, well, can I please say?
Wait a minute. Go back to that slide, Mike, that you had, that you was speaking on.
The last one?
The one that Mike was talking on, go right there. The obligations we have, that you've already put in place. Know what you're talking about we have to do because we've already put that in place, all right? And I just want us to be extremely careful. The manager has said to me over and over again, Mr. Chairman, you got to make sure that the board understands they got to be careful and take the steps. And honestly, if we got to go somewhere, I'm more in your corner, Commissioner Kicklighter, of whatever it is, dropping it a percentage or something we can meet, all right? But let's don't tie our feet and say we're gonna do it, we're gonna drop $50 million out the budget and we don't know where we're gonna get the $50 million from.
Right.
We cannot do that.
Nobody's asking that.
Can I also say, here's what I would do if I represented mainly City of Savannah. I would hope our staff will finally please give us the information we've requested. I'd like to see, based on population, I want to see what the last 3 SPLOST allocations would have been going to the unincorporated area by itself. I want those figures. I want the last local option sales tax the previous 10 years based off of that population. I want to see what it would have been
Wait a minute.
over that 10-year period.
Lost over what?
Over the last 3 different SPLOST we've had.
Last 3.
Yeah. And then I want the previous lost that we were operated under before, and then I wanted the current loss based off population now, what the unincorporated area would actually receive if it was divvied its fair share. If we were...
We did strictly by population.
Yeah, if we did it just basically however you allocate it to the cities and all, do it the same way, but allocate it to the county. And that's all you gotta do. That's it. And then when somebody goes, why did y'all do? Well, my God, they paid $800 million and they didn't get a penny back. This balanced it out. This is the way it's done.
If the numbers were up there, it'd be plain.
Yeah, it would be plain.
Today, that it should be done right.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
If it increases the M&O though, that's where the challenge would come in.
That's where the challenge is.
Well, that's what we're saying we want.
Right, so we do it, we phase it over time. I mean, I think that's responsible. If we see an increase already on this side, then it wouldn't necessarily hurt. And then just to be clear, loss is supposed to be used to reduce property taxes anyway, so if we got an allocation of loss.
Countywide.
Exactly.
Right, countywide, well, no, but the municipalities, they get their share, and they're technically supposed to reduce their taxes based on that, if I'm not mistaken. That's what.
I'm not talking about the municipalities.
But see, if you live in the city, you get a double hit because you get you get your loss off of your city taxes, and then you get your loss off your county taxes. So if you're in the city, you get a double hit.
Right.
Right, but unincorporated gets
Only one.
a shared hit.
Yeah,
They gotta pass
they pay in, but they don't get anything back.
Because
And it's just, if you've had the right numbers up there, you
But
see
when we
how.
say- but when we
I'm
say-
saying that alone
When
would
we say
cover
they don't get anything out, that's not correct. Because loss has to be for the entire county.
Right. They get
That's the first paragraph.
Exactly.
Of the definition.
Well, that's just what I've been saying, Chairman.
Whatever the loss is, has to be countywide.
Right.
That's because 151 counties do it that way.
But no, that's 159 do it that way.
No, that's wrong.
City residents get a double rollback.
They get a double rollback.
Their
True.
rollback, and they get
Right.
unincorporated.
And the county gets that one rollback. Which
Just
is
for the
countywide.
M&O portion.
no,
Right?
Yeah,
SSD doesn't get a rollback.
They don't get a rollback.
exactly.
City of Savannah.
That alone,
Right.
That alone
That alone
pulls out
would
that
wipe out the whole-
8.8 million.
that would
by
wipe out
itself.
that entire SSD budget if they got their fair share. So that's all you had, if we could show your citizens.
Well, if we had
nobody
the
wants
right
to screw
numbers
the
and we
other
could put 'em up
citizens
there.
over. I mean,
So, one other question then, and John, well, I guess more seasoned team members would know better. Would there be any shot at just lobbying the state to allow us to take our share of lost?
I've tried on multiple occasions. I worked
we
with
tried that
CCG, and everything I tried came right back to, why don't y'all eliminate the SSD and solve your own problems instead of coming to the Capitol?
because they ain't
They
gonna
get the
want to take
problem,
off the
solve
150
it.
people, 150 other counties.
They're not gonna
to
make
please
a
us. I mean,
statewide change for every single county just to appease us. It's just politically not gonna happen.
Well, I'd say this, to answer, Linda, you said you want to know what some of us think.
Strategic direction.
I can tell you that if, I have a pretty large size unincorporated citizens in my district, and if there is a way that we can reduce the SSD without increasing the M&O, I'm all for it.
Okay.
And then too,
I wanna know, is it gonna generate some more money?
No.
It's gonna generate equity.
It's gonna be
amongst all the
fair.
people in
Yeah,
town.
just fair. It'll just be
That's what it's
fair.
gonna do, but it's gonna take time. But we have to start somewhere. We can't wait another 49 years thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think now is the time to give it consideration. If we could get those correct numbers at the next commission meeting and put them up for everybody to see, to show. Again, that was a great slide. It had all the revenues up there. And alls I wanted to do is show the revenues that aren't up there.
And we can use that for fire operations too?
Yes, yes.
M&O can do everything.
Yeah, it can do all of
The
it.
SSD is a creation of this commission 49 years ago.
Specifically even says for county police department in this.
Created it out of thin air, we can eliminate it and go to one budget. And over time.
That's what all 150 other ones do.
Reduce the SSD as a supplement so that there's not enormous upheaval of fixing it all at once. I mean, to be perfectly fair, we should do it for this next budget. There should be no SSD budget. Shouldn't have been for as long as I've been up here.
Yeah.
For 20 years. But we got to work in the real world. And I understand the chairman's concerns. You got folks, 200,000 people that have been subsidized for all this time, and when they don't get subsidized anymore, they're going to scream. Nobody wants that free mailbox money.
So here's
to disappear.
Yeah, here's the easy way to say to your constituents is basically living in a city, you've been paying $5 for a Big Mac, unincorporated is paying $8 for that same Big Mac. We just made the cost the same, and that's all you did. I mean, it's.
So you're saying that unincorporated pays more?
Yes.
And
Because they don't get it back, so, because they don't get any back, so they're paying.
Roll back. So what are we offering back if we eliminate it?
We're just making it equitable where it's cost the same amount for that hamburger. Then instead of, literally, that's a silly sounding analogy, but that's basically what it comes down to is the way this is structured, because they don't get reimbursed back. They're not getting their change back. Okay, they're paying, they both give them a 10, and maybe, it should cost the same, but they're just giving the cities back all the change, and they don't give it to these people.
So you mentioned the money that we would have gotten had we not had SSD?
What I'm saying, as a,
Just goes into the general.
what I'm saying is the unincorporated citizens pay their fair share into the lost penny. But they do not receive their fair share back from the state that the county as a whole receives and all the municipalities. There's a specific clause in the lost, the lost law ordinance that says, absent an agreement, all the cities will get their share divided up on population. That's why everybody during census time is real fond about getting everybody counted, because it makes a difference for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
If the unincorporated area got to partake, using their 90 to 100,000 citizens, their share would come out of all the cities. But right now, the cities are getting, 100,000 people are paying in. I mean, if I had some props, I could lay down dollar bills and show this many dollar bills got donated in. Y'all get this, you, nothing. And that's the problem. That's the crux of it. Franchise fees is a small amount, a couple of million on each of them. Lost is a big amount. And if we had those figures, it'd make this conversation so much easier for everybody to understand, that you would plainly see that there's an iniquity. And this is just simply a solution to help balance the scales of fairness to all the people in our county, which we all represent as a group. 9 people, we represent everybody. We can do this. Our predecessors created this, and they did it. I mean, I would have voted for it back then, because there wasn't any loss, and the franchise fees weren't enough to make any difference.
That was the question I wanted answered, and I was looking to see it. Why did they do it then?
I don't know why they did it, but I can say on principle, it was fair, because they were saying, hey, you get these services, you pay for them. I would have voted for that.
And I really think
49 years go by, and you got this new revenue source, this fifth penny, and then these franchise fees, and then you get these huge numbers of people paying in. I mean, the numbers are millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars that the citizens are sending up to the state. But when the state's giving out things, they're the redheaded stepchild. No, you don't get any. Only the beautiful people get it. You? No, you don't get none of that. And that's just how it is. And we can't.
And I like red-headed stepchildren, so you know.
and what I say,
I think y'all look good.
Let me ask this question. Those 6 counties, which do the same thing we do, all right, and they do the M&O and the SSD, right? Am I right? If you know the counties, anybody know?
They're pretty small and,
Okay.
yeah.
Here's what I want to ask though: Are those the counties that's defined as being urban?
No, they're not urban.
All of them not urban?
No, I think Jones County, one of them, but they're all small counties. So they're
That do,
not urban.
that do what we do?
We're urban.
We urban, yeah, see, and that's what I'm asking, is that, are the 6 counties the urban counties which do it, or, like, for instance, I know Fulton County doesn't do it because they don't have any unincorporated at all, right? So they don't have to have but one tax, okay? But if you're talking about a Richmond County, which has both, is urban.
Well, that's a combined.
And they combine the two, right, they combine. Same thing Bacon, the same thing Macon Bibb did, all right? But my point in asking that is that the majority of those counties, the sheriff do what our police department do.
Yeah.
The sheriff's paid out of the M&O budget. So now we pay the police out of the M&O budget.
And the police,
which is
the
just a
police
division.
department is different. So therefore, that's why, I'm just wondering if that's why they created, because some of the services, and I don't know what they did 49 years ago, all right? I don't know why they did what they did 49 years ago. But I do know that, for instance, when we say they don't get no money out of the laws, that's not true. They get, everybody in the county gets reduced ad valorem tax because of laws. Now, those in the municipalities get a second because the municipality get a second. But our unincorporated don't get that, all right? So I understand that. So if you say that, then I know you're totally true, right? But when you say they don't benefit at all, that's not true. When we do SPLOS, everybody in SPLOS receive, because everybody gonna use the courthouse, right? Everybody use the jail. And I'm just thinking, what's some other SPLOS projects we did?
Memorial Stadium.
Memorial Stadium, everybody has access to that. So it's countywide. See?
That don't help us out a bit on our negotiations with the cities, though.
Right.
Well,
No,
if we
that
follow
don't.
that train
Well,
of
see,
thought,
let me
then
tell
we
you
should
something.
get all the lost
Let me
because
tell
we
you
help
something.
everybody, and the
And
city
it's
should get
because-
0,
and
and
it's
that would solve it.
Because you're delegating.
Right on going the way we're going.
But it's because we did not hold to what the state was telling us should have been our fair share of loss. They told us we should have gotten 57% countywide.
I would like to mention that the SSD does get the insurance premium tax 100%.
Right.
That's $7 million.
And that has to be, that's a rollback that goes only to unincorporated.
Only to unincorporated.
And has to be shown on the tax bill that way, so.
I just,
At the fire services?
The
I mean,
millage
if y'all
rate is
decide,
always gonna be different.
if y'all decide y'all want to do away with the SSD, just give us directions on how you want to do it.
I think I
think
laid it out, just.
Can you use that insurance money for fire services?
Yes.
can.
But it's a.
But the word in there is safety.
About that.
It doesn't say fire, it says
Supposed to
safety.
roll back the millage rate in the unincorporated area, the insurance premium tax, or whoever, whichever fund gets it. And we are not charging a tax for the fire department.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm gonna have to talk.
So we just roll back millage with it.
And police. It could be used for police. That makes sense.
I think that, I don't want to beat this horse to death, but I think we know where y'all want to go. And I'm going to ask the finance staff and Ms. Kramer to kind of bring back some options that y'all can vote on, knowing that my only caveat is that list right there. Because there are going to be some years that we're going to be able to roll back a little bit. Some years we may have to roll back more.
Yeah.
But we're going to bring back some options for y'all to vote on.
Michael, my fellow commissioners, if y'all show us those numbers that I'm asking about splost and lost.
We have that for you.
And those things are horrendous and it don't begin to cover the services, then I'll change my opinion. I mean, I'm not for, all I want is fairness.
The only thing.
If those numbers come back off where I'm totally wrong, heck no. I want it to stay like it is if that's the case. But we gotta see the correct numbers to know what we're.
But one of the things I want you to also keep in mind that when you take from the M&O, a lot of that revenue goes in M&O, when you take from the M&O to subsidize the SSD, then we've got to look at what the impact on M&O has.
Absolutely.
We can get that.
That's why I said, if it's 12%, maybe 8% can go to, I mean, whatever. But we
also look at the impact of what it is to the SSD when they pay into the law and don't get that back.
We can do that.
That's the numbers I'm saying that we gotta
We
have.
also look into the impact to the SSD residents that they pay into franchise fees, but they don't get any of them back. That's a huge impact.
That's the
way bigger impact than what you're talking about.
That's the biggest one, the franchise fees. Yeah. That's the biggest one.
Then we'll know whether
It's a big impact on a select group of citizens, and all we're asking for is equity and fairness to everybody. Not advantage, not something for nothing, just equity and justice.
But
So we'll provide that for you.
it all washes in the other 150 states.
All I ask you to do is do yourself and everybody else's favor, especially the general public, is give the staff time to work out all those numbers and figures. You got a good idea of what you want to do is what they're telling me, all right? Let them give you that. Let's look at it before we put it on the agenda and vote it in.
Absolutely.
All right?
Thank you for
I
the
want y'all to surprise me and say I got a commissioner item and we want to put on the agenda. And we want to pass this resolution. And we're not ready to pass the resolution. All right? Yeah, we need to be on the same. Listen.
Hey, thank all of you, and when we see these numbers, if they're crazy, I'll be the first to back out of proposing it. But I think we're gonna see that it's very feasible.
Well, it'll be a foot race, because I'll back out of it too. I'm not asking for anything for nothing.
Thank y'all, staff, thank y'all.
And I'm not against working on anything that works. I just don't want us to make a mess. And then we-